sake, Paul. Holy shit.
This was probably the peak for the game's main story, and as such, the peak of its writing entirely. Even with the knowledge that the responders were back now, it was still hard to completely dismiss the feeling of exploring the desolate airport. The responders had been doing everything they could to combat the Scorched, but ultimately they were wiped out by their assaults and the viral infections. The Scorched Plague was a mysterious illness that would infect humans and local wildlife and convert them into something that was very similar to ghouls, except rather than just becoming feral monsters, they've become something of a hive mind. I mean, in-game, they are literally indistinguishable from feral ghouls, but lore-wise, there's meant to be a distinction. We also caught a glimpse of what had been spreading the virus. Giant mutated bats, I mean.
What the? It's Parthenax!
What? Son of a bitch. Inside the airport, we got to the main operations center where the responders made their last stand. An overseer log here explains that the responders developed a vaccine to protect people from the plague, but it came too late to save Appalachia. She urges us to get vaxxed, and I mean, yeah, I don't want to turn into a literal pile of glowing ash, so sure, we'll look into this. You're supposed to then refer to a terminal out in the R&D medical lab to get the full details on the vaccine, and that would direct you to Charleston, all the way in the southwestern part of the map. I kinda missed that detail, but I had Pat, who was being very diligent with keeping up with the story, our objectives, and where we should be going. So I didn't actually learn about the vaccine, but the game was kind enough to let me keep pace with Pat and get it anyways. Remember this moment. It'll be coming back up later. Looking at the map, there's 3 roads leading out of Morgantown that will take the player to Charleston. 2 very roundabout scenic routes, east and west of the area we just came through, or a center road that cuts straight down to it, also putting the player in contact with some stuff they likely haven't explored yet. We wound up taking the eastern route that cut through Summersville and skirted around a dried lake bed. Not much happened here except for us stumbling across our first super mutants. Yes, this is another Bethesda game with orcs somehow shoehorned in. We eventually made it to Charleston, but before we continue, we really gotta talk about this game's map. When Pat and I were first talking about this collaboration, we were also throwing around the idea of taking a trip to West Virginia just to see how 76 compared to the real thing. Now, I did not actually expect the trip to happen until I was in Cumberland, Maryland, meeting Pat at an Amtrak station.
Hells yeah.
We chose Cumberland to start our tour for 2 reasons. First, it would allow us to cross the state line together so we could immediately start capturing footage for our videos. Second, the Amtrak designation for Cumberland was CUM. So yes, Pat and I met for the first time in Cumtown. We also spent 20 hours in a car together driving through desolate country roads and shared a hotel room for 2 nights. Degenerate fanfiction fuel aside, the trip completely invalidated almost everything I had written about 76's map before I had left. We even ended the trip in DC for a few reasons, and this allowed us to do a quick comparison between how Bethesda handled that city in Fallout 3 with how they handled West Virginia in 76. Needless to say, the longer the trip went on, the worse our impressions were about Bethesda's take on the Mountain State. People love to praise the map of 76, and with good reason. I still think functionally it's the best map Bethesda's ever produced. It's a real joy to explore with several distinct biomes that cleanly blend into one another to make something that feels quite grounded for a video game map. At the same time, Bethesda still made the map fun with tons of points of interest, and the terrain wasn't painful to traverse. The map's supposed to be 4 times the size of Fallout 4's map, and Bethesda seems to have used this extra real estate to create more realistic mountain slopes and valleys. The highest point of the map is said to be 4,800 feet above sea level, same as its real-life counterpart, and I'm inclined to believe it. It's hard to judge scale in games, mostly because monitors deprive us of our sense of depth, but trusting the 3D modelers did a good job, we can use trees and other details to gauge what's going on with the game's scale. When looking at the new River Gorge Bridge overlooking Flatwoods, which isn't its actual place in the state, FYI. Yeah, it looks like it's 780 feet tall. The problem is that while I think they got some of the key elevations correct in the game, the horizontal scale and the characteristics of the terrain are not correct. In isolation, all of the inconsistencies wouldn't be deal breakers, but in combination with one another, they all add up to create a space that does not feel like West Virginia. Like, it's not even close. At least none of the locations we visited, and we drove for 800 miles in the state. The landscape of the entire state is very dramatic. If you're not standing on top of a mountain, then you're being hemmed in by wooded mountains in pretty much every direction. Anywhere you look, odds are there's a wall of trees, rocks, and earth towering over you. When we were standing at the bottom of the Glade Creek Ravine, staring up at a bridge 700 feet above us, surrounded on both sides by sheer walls of trees and land, I felt a sense of claustrophobia I had never felt before. When I was there, I kept thinking how difficult it would be to survive in that region without modern amenities or serious knowledge and skill. It all made sense how, even today, development in West Virginia is done where it's technically feasible. Only through feats of engineering and construction genius have parts of the state been made traversable. So much of it is still untamed wilderness, and the communities that do exist are often remote and secluded. If there's any open, flat, buildable space, like along the Kanawha River, it was developed generations ago. As a result, this is still a place that demands you adapt to it. The land changes people, even me, and I was only there for a couple days. Just driving on its insanely hilly and windy roads required me to get used to that sense of vertigo you get when you're in an elevator. I'd gotten so used to popping my ears from the pressure differences from the changes in elevations that I was still habitually trying to pop them when I got back home, even though we have literally no hills around here. One of the many thoughts that crossed my mind while I was there was that this was a perfect setting for a survival game. That makes it all the more sad that Bethesda just could not get it right. Things were too spread out to create that sense of claustrophobia, the trees were too sparse to create natural walls, the mountain faces were bald exposed cliff rock, which...
Yeah, but it was a positive game, though. It had really sunny, shiny days, which I thought was such a cool move. I thought they did it so well.
The foliage was still in hibernation, but looking at summer pictures, you cannot see any exposed rock.
Because those survival games, I think you want that darkness, but I think you're foolish to...
through the region for tens to...
You want that darkness and that immersion, and I do too sometimes. I know because I do. I go looking for things that block my view and shit like that. Make my make the darkness worse so you can't see what's coming in the darkness. And trust me, I'm into that vibe. I am. But so let's recast here and but all the time sucks, which is something that you could tell Bethesda thought about when they did 76. Like, about half the time, it's sunny outside. Really, truly beautiful. And it's just Appalachia and a piece of America. Quite beautiful one, actually.
Hundreds of millions of years, and 76 reduces them to little brooks you can literally jump across. They did nail that sense of awe when reaching the edge of a cliff and seeing a vast landscape sprawling out in front of you. Bethesda has been doing this for many games now, and I don't think they wasted the potential West Virginia offered them to flex that particular
Coffer's
muscle.
purple.
Pat and I ended up visiting just about every major settlement we recognized.
Okay, so I checked upstairs. It's going to be downstairs.
Then went south to Grafton, then west to Clarksburg. After that, it was south to Sutton, which
I was hoping
really cool
Chess was here,
then
damn
to
it.
Charleston, where we spent our first night. The next day, we drove around Charleston for a bit, then headed south through Beckley, then east through Lewisburg into White Sulphur Springs. Then it was north to the Green Bank Observatory, which in-game is just thrown on the side of a mountain, but in real life it's at the bottom of a massive valley. This is because the mountains and trees create a natural barrier against radio interference, which the telescopes need to be isolated from. I have a hard time believing someone at Bethesda actually visited this location, because the observation deck had only one plaque there, and it explained all of this in plain English. If they'd have been there, I doubt they would have missed that information or the fact that cell service was cut for 2 hours. Anyways, after Green Bank, we continued north until we hit US 250, which took us southeast out of the state through very dramatic mountain ridges into the Shenandoah Valley in Virginia. From there, we went all the way back up into West Virginia.
He got drone shots, which is really
before
beautiful.
Turning down south to spend night 2 in DC.
They took a vacation together
because we were seeing landscapes that didn't even exist in 76. For several hours, we were driving through picturesque pastoral ranch land that sat at the bottom of a long valley between two mountain ridges that were covered in tall hardwoods. Nothing like this existed in-game, which was shocking because they decided to include a bunch of biomes that don't even exist in the state. In-game, we have 6 biomes. The forest is the starting place for new characters and is probably my favorite biome. It seems like this is meant to be the western side of the state, which, doesn't look like the region at all. While that part of the state was a little less mountainous than the eastern side, it was still incredibly mountainous. Even more.
I wish they would remaster 76 already.
Like, the Morgantown Airport is literally built on top of
They're doing it to Fallout 4, which means that they can probably do it to 76, I hope.
That splits the map in half.
So.
I'm guessing this is meant to be the Appalachian Plateaus, but in real life, this region is just as forested as the western part of the state. The mountains are also not jagged
to kill the
with
water
many sheer
clusters,
cliff faces, but are instead
but it's
more
only like $2
rolling
grand.
with some flatness to their
time?
tops. I just find it strange that this is really the only part of the map that's actually somewhat appropriate appropriately mountainous. It's
Yep,
still not enough,
it's
and there's a
awesome.
clear lack of deep, narrow ravines, but at least we got mountainous terrain here, unlike almost the entire rest of the map. Then there's the ash heap, which doesn't actually exist in West Virginia. This is
Something
just
that
a
I
giant
like
open-air
about
coal
this kid is he's not your average gamer. He's better than your average gamer because he's a lot more popular and makes a lot of money doing this and stuff. And I would say, but he doesn't approach it like your average MMORPG player. He approaches it like Patrician, a single player connoisseur. And I like the way the single player connoisseurs approach the reviews and such. My best friend is one of those. He can only really stand single player games. He likes multiplayer, and he enjoys co-op just like me, and he's addicted to it. But he doesn't go looking for multiplayer, and I don't blame him. A lot of the time, that to work with someone else, you often are frustrated with the person. Even when you love them or whatever, and you're happy with them, you're often frustrated when you're working with someone because you're like, well, they're not me and they're not perfect or whatever, and they're not doing what you want half the time. But it's still really fun. But that's the eyes through which these nerds look at this. Him and Patrician. And it is a very solitary, sort of naive. I don't know what the word is green. I think it's a very green way to look at it. But it's an optimistic, wonderful way to look at things. You'll see such attitudes in Mormons and people from Alaska. They're not scared of city life or city problems or any of that, and they're not scared of complications or internet trolls or anything like that. But they themselves are fairly socially removed, and I would say that. And that shows in the videos in the way that he speaks and all that. But and now he's like an internet star. So you got to kind of wonder what that does to someone's life like that. It's kind of interesting. Like, I think a lot of people in my industry are expecting the video game nerds to be like this guy. But in my experience, when the video game nerds are like this guy, they tend to have sort of sort of sexless lives. They tend to be sort of middling to happy. I'd say middling unhappy to happy. Instead of just just happy all the time or whatever, like I'm not happy all the time. I'm angry most of the time, right? But I'm happy all the time, though. I will say every day I'm like pretty happy all the time. I try not to gloat about it, Try not to gloat that I'm a happy person with a happy life and a happy job and all this stuff. But and I wonder sometimes like these people's backgrounds, what leads them to have this personality. And it's funny because I think they went to YouTube thinking that everybody was like everybody in the scene anyways was like them, and I think they had kind of a cold surprise a little bit. I think a lot of the people in the scene are actually more like me. They often have outward jobs and outward lives, and I didn't have a family, but many of my friends did. Almost all my friends did. And it's kind of funny. I'm like the only one that I can think of that. My best friend, he didn't have a kid yet, but I'm like the only one I can think of that anyways, that pursued the single life with like zeal. I mean, I didn't really. I mean, I was with a woman most of my life. But but I still had kind of a bachelor's life in a way. I didn't cheat. I just, I definitely, when I was single, I would chase women with the ardor of a single man. I did not have I had a lot of long-term relationships, and I was happy in them. But I mean, I don't know where I'm going with this. It's just kind of interesting. It's like, the style of people that I think he's trying to appeal to weren't the people that watch his videos, which is kind of interesting. And so it's funny. I think he thinks that the people that watch Patrician TV and him are exactly like him. But I think when he speaks artistically about Appalachia, I think it's really cool that he did that, and I think he got a lot of like brownie points with the nerds for going to Appalachia. I'm jealous of him. I wish I could have done that, but I don't know how well that goes over with the audience itself, which is there to troll 76, which is kind of funny. And so you hear him go off on like a tangent about his 2-week sojourn with his best friend or whatever to go see Appalachia. But I think sometimes like they kind of like lose like sight of what their audience might actually be thinking. You know, and it's funny, and so they'll go like and you know what, okay, the example I want to use about this is kind of like Frasier. Did you guys ever see that television show Frasier? They were wonderful men. They were doctors. They were good people. They saved lives essentially. They were always saving relationships, and I'm talking about like what the image of Frasier and his brother might be in the real world, right? What they were modeling Frasier to be after. It was like the NPR smug crowd that, was into psychiatry and all this other stuff and rich things and money and blue bloods and all this. And like, but if you recall, almost every season, Frasier had an episode about being bullied or being afraid of somebody who was actually real. Like who was like just a normal middle class person, would pretty much like eat like, so there was like sort of a constant like you guys would get eaten alive in high school, like sort of like underlying current of like nervous jokes to the rich people who watched this show and stuff, like, oh, here's to the people who got beat up in high school and all this. And it's funny because I think these nerds like Patrician and private sessions are like, I think they think that they want to, I think that they think they're appealing to these smug NPR sort of white hat nerd, like sort of like, I would say intellectual crowd. I think that's who they think that their audience is. But what I think their actual audience is, believe it or not, and I'm sorry, I really do believe this, and I think they've self-deluded themselves into believing that their audience cares that they visited Appalachia to compare the real game to Appalachia or whatever. And I'm sure some of us really, like the boomers and stuff, cared about it and liked it, right? But honestly, I bet like 70% of their audience is like 14-year-olds to 22-year-olds who just couldn't give a flying jack off fuck about your gay trip to to like, it's weird because it's like whatever, to Appalachia or whatever for 2 weeks with your best friend or whatever, it's fine. No one cares, or whatever. It's just kind of funny that that they think that their audience is something that isn't going to troll them for this. And that's where the laughter ends for me. They have this Frasier approach, but the video game culture is not Frasier. It's not Frasier. No, okay, even the most like rich people in video game streamerhood, being OTK, those people are not Frasier. They're not Blue Bloods. They work those jobs because they're like me. They're from lower and middle class, like, backgrounds, and they want that streamer money and that lifestyle and that clout and all that, right? Very seldom is it a truly discerning, educated blue blood that's in a job like this. And so it's weird because I think, and that's where I'm getting at here, I think they've kind of like naively self-deluded that their audience is Frasier and they want smug anecdotes about visiting Appalachia and comparing it to Fallout 76. And that's cool that they did it. I'm not a hater. I'm not here talking or making fun of them. I actually really, really like that he did it, But I think it's funny that they think that their crowd wants to see it or hear it. That's where they lose me. I think the crowd's intellectual, and I think they want a good appraisal of 76. But I think they're there to troll, and I think they're looking for humor, and I think they're thinking gutter humor, and I don't think they're there to hear about a high-class Frasier anecdote about visiting Appalachia and taking drone. He took drone shots of beautiful Appalachia forests and stuff, right? Him and Patrician, and that shit's dope, and it appeals to me. You know, excuse me, sorry. You know, that shit's dope, and it appeals to me, but and it's classy, and I like classy, you know, but I still don't think that's their audience. You get it? What you see why it took me so long to get around to what I was saying, because I do not wish to insult these people. I respect them, but I don't think that's their audience, and I think they kind of come across as these naive a little bit of white belly nerds who could easily maybe be taken advantage of by the wallet inspector kind of thing. Wallet inspector, oh, everything's in, you know, they made fun of this on The Simpsons with the wallet inspector joke. Snake the criminal shows up and he's like, wallet inspector. And these three nerds from Homer's college are like, wallet inspector, oh yes, here's our wallets. I hope everything is in order. And he's like, I can't believe that worked. And that's the joke that comes to mind to me when I hear some of these YouTube nerds. And it's weird because my you know, I've had the word goober leveled at me in my life, but then when they understand that the cops are after me for heroin, they kind of change their opinion, you know. But like, you know, but I do have goober tendencies, and I'll give them this point. I tell them all the time, I'm like, yeah, you can call me a goober if you want, but I don't like that term. Because, like, for a time there, I was about to run a prostitution ring across 2 state lines with all the hookers and the dope, and my 22-year-old hottie fucking girlfriend, who's hotter than the top 10 supermodels of this world, and my living in 5-star hotels and shit like this. It wasn't even like the style of nerd that would qualify as, say, like, you know, like an actor like Nicolas Cage or something like that. It was more like Kurt Cobain. A lot more like Kurt Cobain and Sid and Nancy than like the goober side of me that you see in front of the stream. You know? And drugs were my way of life, and thievery was my way of life, and like, you know, I had been in, we had like my rap sheet's a mile long and all this, but no felonies, etc. And so I had a goober side to me, sure, but I don't fall that way. Never have. I've never had a lifestyle like that and all that. So it's weird because I like that they're alluding to the intellectual side of YouTube and the smart kids that are watching this and listening to this video in the background while they're playing 76 or whatever, trying to do the comparison and taking a deep dive into 76. And I like that these kids did not hold back on the nerdy side of it, and I like that they're doing the Frasier and Niles approach, but they're okay. But I'm sorry, and I really believe this, or I wouldn't say it so many times in so many different ways. Like, their audience, however, is that video game Bully by Rockstar. I mean this. their audience is Bully from Rockstar. Same era, same kids who played that game, same people who thought Bully was funny, and that were the audience that Rockstar was trying to reach. You know, I wish I wasn't so, like, I'm a bit of a profiler, a bit of a social profiler here. So I'm throwing out a free social profile here. But I mean, it needs to be said here. Like, you know, and so you guys kind of, like, you know, your whole I wouldn't get you wouldn't, I'm sorry, you wouldn't make it, this whole you wouldn't have made it alive, you wouldn't have made it out alive in high school kind of thing. It translated to this video. And my problem is I, every time that they do some beautiful illusion like this, I choke up in tears, because I think the metaphor and the art form and the artwork of it is really beautiful, and it's something that fits YouTube, and it's really beautiful. It's why I feel that, you know, Private Sessions should be famous, right? It should be successful. But the audience of bully nerds that are making fun of him in the background, that I can literally hear. I can hear them trolling him as he talks about comparing real life Appalachia to 76. And I'm sorry, but, like, read the room. Read the room. And I don't say this to hurt his feelings or troll his work. His work's great. His work's great. But you can tell that they had, and I love this aspect of him because I'm the same way. I'm doing the same stuff. He had some vision of what he wanted this to be, which was classy. So he went the classy antidote route and took a vacation to fucking Appalachia so he knew what he was talking about when he talked about the game. And I love how nerdy and high class that is. And we aspire to the Frasers and the Niles's lives of the world. I aspire to Fraser and Niles. I do every day. I listen to NPR. I drink my red wine. I read books, and I listen to the writings on the wall from the historians and the economists, and I try to live that Fraser and Niles life. I do, but I turned out like the bully kid, smoking heroin and smoking speed and smoking weed and drinking. And like kind of like making fun of people all the time and coming from a toxic WoW culture and stuff. And I believe that I'm sort of the audience for a video like this. And it's funny when they try to go the higher intellectual route. And I love it. And I'm sure they get hits off of it. I'm sure it's not a mistake to do it. It's not. I'm not saying that it is a mistake. It's just kind of funny because I don't think the audience is what they think it is. And I don't think it harms them. But I also think that the witty anecdotes are also a waste of time, and that sucks. I'm a glass half full person, right? I believe that these people that would troll them are still good people. They would say that I think their argument would be is that I'm a pessimist, and I'm saying that their audience is like a little bit less than what they want it to be or something like that. But no, I'm just a pragmatist. I believe that's who their audience is, and I think they have misgauged it. And I think they waste sometimes 10 minutes in a video, and then sometimes you got to imagine what a trip to Appalachia actually costs to be there for like 2 weeks or whatever. It's got to be like $5,000 or something like that, right? Or whatever. I don't know, maybe less than that. $3,000, $2,000 if they're frugal. $2,000 if they're frugal. $3,000 if they're not, maybe, right? And like or more than that maybe, depending on the hotels. And so, and sure, they took a vacation. I'm not saying that wasn't the original point, but I wonder if they thought that recording all that stuff and getting those shots and getting the anecdotes and stuff for their video was worth the amount of money they spent in the end. Because remember, this is the bully culture. I mean, that's how I think of them. They're like the bully culture. They're the kids who grew up on Rockstar's Bully and Jackass, you know. And so they're the Jackass crowd. They're looking for funny. They're looking for elevated and intellectual. Don't get them wrong. But they're not looking for some Frasier-esque sort of like nerdy anecdote for about 10 minutes on about taking a vacation in comparison to the game. That's not his audience. And I wonder sometimes, like, it's beautiful that he took the shot. And I'd like to shake his hand in real life and be like, I respect that you guys took that trip to Appalachia, right? I fucking really respect it. But then I want to lecture him and be like, but I thought it was great because your audience, I don't think, respects that kind of thing, right? And so in a simple conversation with him in real life, I would just drop the bomb in a single sentence. I'd be like, I don't think your audience respects that kind of thing. And it's going to throw him for a loop. He's going to be like, what? And I'd be like, no, I don't think your audience respects that kind of thing. And it's kind of funny. I don't think even like the Skyrim audience thinks of themselves as these high-class nerds. But I think they actually weigh out as Billy Madison, kind of more like, I think they actually kind of come out like the raunchier side of Adam Sandler. I think they do. And like, you know, those SNL comedians. So and hearing him tell the anecdote, I'm like, yeah, you made your way to my heart with this, but it's a little smug. It's a little NPR. I think Fallout 76 is kind of a gun game that draws like kind of more sort of gun folk and gun kids. And I just don't know if you know your audience very well. And that's not some diss. I'm just saying. I think you guys have this wonderfully optimist view. And I love it. But I do believe it to be naive.
Line, which Sure, it looks visually striking, but it's not at all.
And I don't say
indicative
these
of
things
any
to harm
location in
anybody.
West
It's
Virginia.
not some LSF thing or some attack on him. I like this guy. I like his. I've watched almost every minute he's ever done. Like this guy. I like everything he's ever done. And I like that he took the shot at the vacation. It's the kind of thing my hipster douchebag ass would have done, right? But I still don't think that my audience would have tolerated more than maybe 90 seconds of it. Which, in the way, by the way, I think that's about as long as he took, too. I think he only took about 90 to 3 minutes with it, but that's not his audience. They're drunk. They're thinking about Magic the Gathering. They love their Bloodborns and their Dark Souls and World of Warcrafts. And they're like, they're old, like 30 to 40. And they don't have time for that. And also, they're looking to make fun of not only the game, but him and his critique. And so if you leave open critique areas like, oh man, your fucking vacation was so nerdy kind of thing, is just kind of funny. And I'm sure nobody in the comments said anything, but I thought it, and I said it too. Because I'm like, oh, I don't know, but that's not your audience though. How much money did you guys spend on that? But when it's not your audience, they don't give two shits about you showing historical proof of what Appalachia actually looks like in the real world or whatever. I don't think they care that much. I think they're here for you to tell them how bad 76 is. Isn't that kind of shitty that I'm that jaded now? But I believe that's why they're there on that video. I really fundamentally believe this. Like, I believe they're there to tell him... Oh, sorry, they're there for him to tell them how bad 76 is because they want something to laugh at. And he tells this Frasier-esque anecdote about his high-class 2-week tour through the New England coast of fucking, what do we call this? East Coast intelligentsia town, fucking Appalachia or whatever mixed with West Virginia. And, like, it's cool, but I thought it was brave. I thought it was brave for what his audience is. And I loved that he went there. And that's all I have to say.
In fact, the state has been clamping down on open-air coal mines since the 70s because they pollute the environment and waterways too much. Fictional
fracking
setting,
is
though,
fucked
so
up.
I'll give
Strip
it a pass.
mining. Strip
The
mining,
Toxic
Pennsylvania
Valley,
and
we
West Virginia.
never figured out what was going
Oh,
on.
God, it's disgusting.
In real life...
When I was a kid, I had a trouble going to school with my father. He would drive me in his van, and I would sometimes cry because you would pass these fucking stripped out fucking mountains where all it would be strip mines. You guys ever seen strip mining before? They do like a layer and they take all the nutrients out of it, all of them. And it's disgusting. It just rapes the land. It's basically the same thing as sowing the land with ash. It does nothing for the land. It just kills it entirely. It's a bunch of black soot left there. They alluded to it in that movie Gatsby when he comes through the electric smog city, or the black smoke city or whatever in the center of Manhattan Island or whatever. And like fucking yeah, like I hate to say it, but yeah, like I don't know. I think I got my point across. I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. I'm very tired. Oh, God.
Grafton and Clarksburg are between Morgantown and Sutton in the central western part of the state. In-game, they're thrown on the northern border where Morgantown would...
Oh, yes, the strip mining, right? So the strip mining, yeah, and so when I was a kid, we would go through Nazareth, Pennsylvania, and Easton, Pennsylvania. One of the places where the Declaration of Independence was signed was Easton, Pennsylvania. Grew up there when I was a kid. And the reality of some places in Pennsylvania after they strip mined out the joint, it was like they sowed Ghost Town directly into the mountainside where no animals could live, no humans could live, nothing could be done there. Probably I think the dust was probably deadly, all this stuff. and some areas in Pennsylvania had just been strip mined out, and it would get to me as a kid. I'd look at the land that they had raped. There'd be entire mountains of it, of just stripped land, stripped thin in layers of about 12 feet each or whatever. They stripped like 12 or whatever it is, 16, 20 feet of layer with their big machines, and you could tell that nothing was ever going to grow there again, not for 200,000 years or something. And after seeing that, like, yeah, that and Pennsylvania, the whole East Coast is really guilty of that. Oh, gotta get out. Maybe should run now while I have a chance to get out. Gotta get the spear out. Okay, he's not hurting me that bad. Maybe I'll take a chance at him. Screw it. Can I block him? Yes, I can. I beat him legit. Hells yeah. Ooh, he had food and stuff. Nice. I guess his body means skill up to me, so I guess I'll cycle it. I'm glad I'm able to kill them. It's probably because I bought this gear. If I didn't, I think I'd probably die. If I used the starter set, I probably would have died. I needed more armor than what I had. My armor training is increasing, which is good, which will make this armor better. He had a friend, but he didn't aggro. See him? Yeah, maybe they don't link that much. I don't know. Let's go kill him. Wait, does he only ever strike with that arm? Oh wow, they're left-handed? They're left-handed. I love that. I love that. What a cool little design choice. I love that. I'm a fan. I see you, Star Vault. I like Star Vault. I think they're a good company. They have problems like everybody else, but not as bad as some other companies. Their game's at least fun, you know. Wish it wasn't dark. It makes this a lot harder. You can't see them that well. There's no, like, I don't know. Am I done here? No. 3 out of 9. Yeah, this was a higher level of difficulty. Nice. Bandage again.
Located near. Then they flattened out the area completely and covered it in white dust that's said to have been from the factories that got blown up in the region during the war. Not only is this biome not at all accurate in any way, it's also just ugly, wasted space, and hardly anything takes the player up there. Of the 150 hours we played, we might have spent 2 hours, like up, 2 there hours up there. The Mire and Cranberry Bog are situated in what appears to be the Shenandoah Valley, which is actually Virginia. So
maybe I can single pull him.
Isn't even in the state whose
good, it's
was the promotional theme song for it. Also, this isn't marshland in real life, but rolling Appalachian foothills with farmland scattered about. Cranberry Bog is a real place in West Virginia, but it's a small, isolated park, not a major biome of the region. I think it's rather telling how badly they misinterpreted the character of West Virginia when you talk to the overseer and she asks you if you've been to the mountains. Go ahead and ask a West Virginian that question and see the funny looks you're gonna get. This is like asking someone if they've been to the Walmart while standing inside of one.
Seen any elves?
But in the setting of 76, it's a perfectly valid question because the Mount is a singular mountain with only one real peak. Ultimately, I think the biggest problem with Bethesda's take on West Virginia is that they were trying to cover too much. Fallout 3 mostly takes place in DC with some of the surrounding Maryland and Virginia suburbs. Fallout 4 was, once again, mostly Boston with some notable suburbs in minor cities. But Fallout 76 is almost the entirety of the state of West Virginia and the Shenandoah Valley thrown in for good measure. Within its borders, West Virginia is about 24,000 square miles.
See, this stuff is when they tune out and they go literally load another video on TikTok. And that's the difference. It's weird because I think it's hard. I think it harms him. I think it harms his brand a little bit. Not like harms him as in he loses anything, but more like he loses potential, you know, which is worse in some ways. It's not as worse, but Definitely a factor. It sucks when you lose potential. I am directly, purposefully losing potential by not doing stuff like tag videos at the end of my video and all this other stuff, right? I don't want the fame. I don't want it. If I come around to fame, it'll be not by my volition. I don't want fame. I don't. So what I do want is a following and an acknowledgement and enough clout where the world saw what I did with my life. And when I'm like 90, I'll be like, here's 40 years of entertainment, people, and you don't have to pay me for it. You know, I just did it. And if they like it, they like it. If they don't, they don't. And yeah. And I don't need their money, and I don't need to edit, and I don't need to do things that other people do. I'm not trying to be some fucking Sigma or some shit or whatever. I just am like that. I'm sort of like that. I've never ever taken a route that anybody almost ever does. When people offer me options, I often think about what my option is, right? Like they offer me choices, excuse me, and I think about, well, here's my options and what I can do. I can get out of the car right now. And I think things like that. I'm like, yeah, I could just stop this right now if I wanted to. You know, that kind of thing. I can't wait till you can switch sets. It's gonna make the game so much better. Yeah, better to just be offensive with these. They hurt way too much. I like that they drop like leaves and shit like that. That's cool.
This area, though, it becomes over 52,000 square miles, which would make it the size of Alabama. Bethesda had to squeeze that and then some into a 16 square mile map, and as a result, I'm not at all surprised that the map really feels like an amusement park. Actually, it's not even that impressive. It's more like some diorama made by a high school class for a state fair. It's a fun map, but damn did visiting the real location ruin it for me. It's funny because when we were touring DC on day 3, I instantly picked up on that Fallout 3 really did capture the energy of its old historic locations and its metro stations extremely well. The devs are from that area, so it isn't surprising, but it just made us wonder even more why Bethesda wanted to set 76 in West Virginia. Did they just want a country setting and thought, oh yeah, West Virginia is rural, just plop it down there? Did they want a map that would let them experiment with more verticality the way they started to with Boston and Fallout 4? Does Todd or Emil have a vacation home in West Virginia, and so it was just easy for them to get some reference photos one weekend? If they weren't even going to try to capture the scale of the geography and the energy of the setting, why bother? If there's one person who I think actually did visit West Virginia, it's Anand Zur. The legend returns with yet another banger soundtrack for 76 that does an excellent job capturing the different moods the region can inspire. A lot of the exploration tracks flow between tranquil and wondrous vibes into the eerie and unsettling. The instrumentation is a lot of natural sounds, lots of woodwinds and subtle strings with some of that iconic industrial noise that fits very well in the West Virginia setting. I'm glad to see, or hear in this case, Zur avoiding the usual soundscape you'd expect when something is meant to be country. While Bethesda themselves seem to fail to understand that there's a lot of different country identities in the US, Zur seem to hone in on what the Appalachian country might sound like. Normally I avoid getting into discussions about music because I just don't think I'm qualified most of the time to have something insightful to say. This time though, not only did I visit the location to get a sense of what the place's atmosphere felt like, I also listened to 76's soundtrack in its entirety while driving through parts of the state. When Pat and I hit the radio quiet zone near Greenbank, my Spotify was obviously knocked out with our cell service. Fortunately, I had put the entire OST on my phone before I left my house, so Pat put that on as we were driving through some of the most scenic and moody parts of the eastern side of the state. At first, we were a bit bummed it was raining on our second day because it was going to make flying the drone very difficult, but when we hit the east-westbound US 250 going along really curvy mountain roads between the Virginias and the misty rain, we could not have asked for more appropriate music. If fandom is to be believed, there's over 300 locations to discover
76
on the map,
is the best soundtrack in my opinion of Bethesda's all their work.
This is because everything is more spread out in 76.
I love the
exploration
76
experience
music.
is, in my opinion, much better.
It's the main reason to play the
Fallout
game.
4 felt way too cramped. Like, there was no chance for me to even try to get lost because there was always a few landmarks within view at any given time. 76 actually has a ton of wilderness that would have me referring to my map to keep myself orientated. Exploring empty parts of the map felt like I was, in fact, exploring and not just painting fast travel markers all over my map. Speaking of the world's map, 76 has ditched the topographical satellite maps in our Pip-Boys for a fully illustrated map instead. And for the most part, I like this map much more. It's covered in little graphics that act as lures for players looking to explore, but not everything in the world has an illustration, and some physical features of the map are no longer applicable in post-war
Dear Lord, I don't want
Appalachia.
to die.
This keeps the map from being omniscient and ruining the thrill of exploration. Things like train tracks, roads, and mountain passes are also shown on the map, which definitely helps with navigation. I do find it funny, though, that Vault-Tec couldn't even get regional surveys and instead just gave their best and brightest maps that out-of-state tourists would pick up at the airport. It adds quite a bit of charm and character to the setting in a way that I never expected a graphical map really could. One thing I gotta bitch about, though, is the removal of the local map. I know, I can't remember the last time I've used it in a modern Bethesda game either, but holy was I clamoring for it in 76. The reason being, this game has huge dungeons. Remember how big the Corvega plant was in Fallout 4? That would now be considered a fairly common medium-sized dungeon. Places like the Poseidon Nuclear Power Plant, Grafton Steel Mill, and the AVR Medical Center are appropriately labyrinthine in their size and layouts, and are a real joy to explore and loot. But you will be getting lost in some of them. You can't get trapped in them though, and that's because for the first time ever, we can now fast travel out of dungeons. While I'm not a big fan of fast travel, and I'm a bit wary of expanding its powers even more, here I'm fine with the compromise because it lets me get to enjoy some really neat industrial complexes. Also, we don't have console commands or saves to reload if we ever get stuck in geometry. You can even now fast travel when there are enemies nearby, you just gotta wait a few seconds. Due to its size, fast traveling in Appalachia is pretty much essential, especially if you're doing lots of quests.
Yeah, it was
that
such
often
a
send you
better
all over the
Bethesda
map,
game
or
than
do public
all
events
of their
which will
other
just teleport
games
you to their
combined.
locations when you join them from the map. It's a neat
2
detail that
silver,
you can join
sure.
public
Yeah.
events by just walking
Not
up to the
good enough,
location they
but,
are taking
yeah.
place in, but good luck getting from the forest to the mire to complete a round of Moonshine Jamboree before the event ends if you're traveling by foot. Fast traveling requires players to fork over some caps. The cost depends upon the distance being traveled and the amount of caps a player has. It wasn't uncommon for me to get hit with a 40 or 50 cap traveling fee by the time I was in the endgame. And yeah, doing a few of those in a night could sting a bit. This is one of the few instances where teaming up with other players is great because you can fast travel to your teammates and their camps and survival tents for free. You can even fast travel to the dungeon they are in. This isn't going to teleport you to their exact location, it's only going to drop you off at the entrance to the place, but it's still convenient enough to justify matching up with some randos once you land in a server. Now that I'm in the charitable mood, there's one feature I want to heap some praise onto, and that's the game's photo mode. At any time, you can open up the main menu and enter photo mode, which opens up a whole suite of camera tools for taking pictures of yourself in the environment. Pat and I leveraged this a lot during our playthrough to document our adventures, and it was just a fun thing to get to do some group photos in a game like this. Not only will it save your photos to look at in the main menu and export them for your own use, it will also take those photos and turn them into biome-specific loading screens. It's such a subtle thing, but a genuinely fantastic innovation I would be surprised does not make a return in Starfield and beyond. I think the biggest disservice done towards 76's Appalachia is that exploring for its own sake is kinda pointless. The few times Pat and I did it in the early game, we ended up kicking ourselves over it later on because quests would send us back to those same regions and even send us into the same dungeons. While Bethesda has a way of making exploring in their games fun, they've yet to crack making revisiting a location fun. There's also the Skyrim issue of finding locations that are related to a quest, and if you don't have the quest in your journal,
That was
the
a really
place is,
deep
at
thing you
best,
said.
pointless and at worst going to lead to some sort of malfunction. We came across a settlement of raiders who were all hostile and started shooting at us, so we started shooting back. Turns out, some of them were quest NPCs or something, so a bunch of them were set as essential. Even dropping them into their down state didn't end their bloodlust, so Pat and I just had to run away from these unkillable raiders. I really can't believe the hellscape essential flags have created is only getting worse in these games. Coming up on night 3, and we finally made it to Charleston. This is another big set-piece location where the world designers kind of just went nuts with the environmental storytelling. It's a neat location, and I like how any major route into the city leads through some kind of carefully built arena. I remember my first time in 2021, I got to the city by following the dried riverbed, and this led to a tense combat sequence where I was getting ambushed by orc snipers while mutants rushed me from the city. The second time I approached from the west, and that led past a nuclear power plant and through a bunch of packs of feral ghouls. The third time was with Pat, and we took a makeshift bridge through a tight orc security checkpoint. The potato server we were playing on dampened the experience a bit, but it was still neat finding yet another way into the city ruins. At this point in our adventure, I officially joined the ranks of Fallout 76's bourgeoisie after breaking down and paying up for Fallout First. I was sold on the
This guy, he probably makes like, you know, I'd say 200 grand a year off his job or something like that. And he really can't seem to handle the $15 monthly fee for Fallout 76. I make $7,000 a year and I pay for Fallout 76, you know? And it's weird. Like, it's frankly weird. You make something like 60 times what I do, but yet you quibble over fucking $12. I've never understood this side of white people. That's a white people thing. I've never understood it. That's that true Ebenezer Scrooge that's inside all white people. I'm sure it's inside me somewhere too. I mean, it's like, it's just there. It's that Ebenezer Scrooge. They want that money. They want that that security and that, you know.
Subscription after seeing all the cool things Pat had access to our first couple of nights, like the survival tent and the, well, I guess that's all I really cared about, actually. There is...
Yeah, like if you're a Bethesda fan and you made your fucking life's, like, career off of their games, which is what you guys did. That's what you and... I mean, you guys are the most famous Bethesda streamers there are, I think. You in particular... Well, I mean, no, there's more than him, but... Like, but Pat is like the most famous Bethesda streamer there is, I think. And I'm sure Pat didn't quibble about spending $12 on Fallout, but it's weird for you to do it. You're willing to blow this money on a vacation to Appalachia, but you won't pay for Fallout First during your Fallout 76 thing. And I think it shows that you were biased against that store before you ever even like experienced it. Because honestly, if you never ever spend any more money than the initial purchase of 76, you never do have to pay for 76, and you can play it very fun for 5 years, no problem, and never spend more than $50, right? And that store shells out free shit to you every single fucking day, every day. And it's good shit too. And like it every day, and sometimes it's actually really good items like skins and stuff, right? It's just free. And 76 spoiled me. After 76, I'm like, when is, I learned that Fortnite's never going to give me a real skin, you know, not in the 10 years that I play it for free, no. And I think that's quite M-wordly, in the respect that, you know, that money, like, I don't know, it's just weird. It's just weird, that money. I'm just gonna leave it there.
It's more to Fallout First than just a survival tent, but I won't lie and say it wasn't anything but the on-demand bank that got me to cough up the $12.99 plus tax. The survival tent was a real lifesaver for my sanity when it came to the awful constant inventory management 76. But it turns out two other Fallout First perks are just as notable. There's the access to private servers, which I already talked at length about, exclusive access to better performing servers that are able to spawn more enemies in a game where loot farming is a core part of the progression. Yeah, I'd say that alone qualifies as a pay-to-win scheme. But wait, it gets worse. You also get access to the scrap box and the ammo box. These two items seemed entirely benign to me at first, mostly because I didn't understand how they even worked, because Bethesda is really bad at explaining how things work in this game, but also because I didn't understand how player storage works in 76 until I was given an abrupt lesson by the game. Two things in Fallout 76 violate what I've come to expect from item storage systems in a Bethesda game. First, all player-owned storage boxes are linked together. So, in Fallout 4, players were free to build as many containers in their settlements as they wanted and fill them with whatever they liked. Many players used this freedom to make warehouses where they could meticulously organize all their items based on their own categories because the inventory menus in Fallout 4 were total ass. There were also workshop inventories the player could dump items into, and those inventories linked with all the crafting stations in the settlement to ease the tedium of crafting. It was a good system, I liked it. You could even link up workshops between settlements by assigning settlers to caravan duty. This created a bit of gameplay consideration because, while it was nice to have your workshop linked, this meant you had one less NPC for resource harvesting. Fallout 76 said, "F all that noise, player storage containers will act like linked workshops. Even the random crafting stations all over the map are magically linked to the player's stash. It's convenient, sure, but it means building any storage outside of a stash box in your camp is utterly worthless. This is weird because the game has a whole bunch of schematics for storage items it will give you when all you want are schematics for upgrades for your guns, but I digress. The second change is that your stash now has a weight limit not too dissimilar to player encumbrance. But where players are free to over-encumber themselves, the stash limit is a hard limit. You cannot push past it and just deal with some mild inconvenience. So this means I was actually doing a big no-no when I dumped 400 pounds of dirty water into my stash just so that I wouldn't have to worry about water for a few play sessions. This wasn't a big deal in the early game when I wasn't even close to hitting the 1200 pound stash limit, but when I entered the end game grind for legendary weapons, I was promptly educated on the necessity of stash management. After getting a few 40+ pound pieces of legendary power armor and miniguns, yeah, I hit that limit fast. This is where the scrap box can help. As it turns out, the weight of all the junk items you accumulate in 76 starts to add up pretty quickly. The game has a system for breaking down junk weapons and armor at crafting stations into their base crafting components, significantly cutting down on weight. The scrap box can do this automatically for junk, while also putting those components into their own bottomless storage that links with the magical player stash network. So let me give some perspective here. By the time I hit the end game, I had accumulated over 600 pounds worth of junk components. That would have eaten up half of my stash box limit, but because I was part of the upper class now, that was not the case. Ammo can also weigh a decent amount, not nearly as much as junk, but it could still be a consideration. Fallout First members get an ammo box, and I'm sure you can intuit what that does. This is very much a case of Bethesda inventing a problem that never existed in one of their games before, and then selling players the means to sort of fix it. I guess just removing the stash limit entirely for paying members would be tipping their hand too much, so they came up with some really sleazy things like the scrap box to try to lampshade it. Bit of trivia, the stash box limit used to be 400 pounds. I cannot imagine playing this game where I'm already being actively punished for not neurotically looting everything, but with a puny 400 pounds plus my character's carrying capacity. The theory I came up with was that players were originally not meant to stockpile junk. Instead, the idea was that if players wanted to craft some upgrades, they'd spend a few hours doing their farming for the necessary components because that would be content. Any way you slice it, the limits on player storage is genuinely nefarious. Player progression is directly tied to gear and upgrades for that gear. Players can craft weapons and armor now, which turns out to be very useful for unlocking crafting schematics for upgrades, but crafting 1,000 guns to break down in order to beat out RNG and get all the schematics obviously eats up a lot of resources. As a result, if you're not looting all the time, you're only making more work for yourself later. As it turns out, more work later is likely what the designers are exactly going for, but that's getting into a discussion best saved for the endgame grind. Believe me, the stash limit is just the tip of the iceberg here. So it shouldn't come as a surprise that players were kinda miffed by Fallout First when it was introduced. A part of that was no doubt due to it being introduced before the game had its redemption arc with Wastelanders. Instead, it was rolled out in the middle of the infamous nuclear winter season. The player base still hadn't been cowed to Bethesda's design ideas in 76 just yet. This led to Fallout First members getting bullied in public lobbies by non-First members when they were caught using something like a survival tent or a First exclusive emote or player icon.
Wow.
Another perk of Fallout First is access to custom worlds. Private servers where player progression is disabled, but the player has access to all sorts of options. Basically, it's console commands. Can't believe we've gone from being able to modify our games however we want to paid mods and then paid mods 2.0 to now just paying to get console commands. Don't worry, as of April 2020, proper modding tools for 76 were still being worked on. Sure. It's a shame custom worlds are price gated because they're actually kinda neat. They have their own progression and you can import characters into them. So I could take Esbern at level 130, set up a custom world, and bring him over with everything that entails. Progression on a custom world won't carry back over to a public or private server running the standard adventure mode, but if you're based enough not to care about 76's progression treadmills, living exclusively in a custom world of your own making isn't a bad fate. If anything, I'd almost recommend that if you want to play 76 like it's Fallout 4.5, but I don't want to encourage anyone to subscribe to Fallout First, so please don't. Also, Fallout
Why?
76 will never be Fallout 4.5.
God damn it, man. Bethesda makes and breaks your fucking career. And you won't even tell the people watching your videos to support them. You seem like an ingrate to me. And that is the word for me. You seem and that is the word. It is not some slang word that you know, doomers use or whatever. Like, I'm talking about, like, you are an ingrate. You are ingrateful to the people that made you your life's career. You won't even tell the people watching your videos to support them. I struggle with that. That kind of two-facedness is really hard for me to stomach, you know? In my opinion of him, God less. It definitely did.
0.5, no matter how hard you try. What you get are
Now, he wants to protect his people. So I do see that side of it. But I mean, also, like, how do you not push, like, supporting Bethesda when Bethesda pretty much, like, made sure that when you go home at night, you have a bed and a house and food? And how do you not support Bethesda and tell them to tell them to buy some? You approached it badly. You should have said, I can't tell you to buy it. I don't think it's a good value, but I think you should try it out for yourself. That would be an easy way to say it, right? I think you should try it out for yourself. Right? But instead, it's like, he's like, don't try it. Don't try it. And it's like, don't try it, it'll kill the game. You know, that's you actively trying to hurt Bethesda. I dislike it. It's ingrateful. It's like you're an ingrate.
are things like difficulty settings, disabling fast travel, free crafting, less restrictive camp building, and unrestricted PvP. In testing this feature, I set up a more hardcore server where the game was actually able to challenge me, and it made me so depressed that this wasn't the base game, or at least an opt-in experience, I had to stop playing after a couple of hours. What's even more depressing is that a hardcore game mode did exist. It was a separate game mode to adventure mode called survival mode. It came with the Wild Appalachia update, but was removed a few months later because it required too much playtesting to balance. Custom Worlds do have a free version to hopefully entice players to pay for the full thing. Every season has a free pre-made mode setup. When Pat and I were playing, it was a free build mode that just let players build whatever they wanted in camps. Useful, I guess, for planning out things to build in adventure mode, but I can't really imagine this being useful for pretty much anyone else. As of writing this, a new season for 76 dropped, and the free build world was replaced with High Risk, which is just a watered-down survival mode. Unrestricted PvP, no player perks, no legendary effects, limited fast travel, and increased items dropped when you die. It wasn't fun. Also, I got a message saying the game was building the world, which is the same message I get when booting up a private server, leading me to think not a single other person was playing, so it had to actually boot a server up for me. So there goes the PvP aspect.
No, it's just its own little
Oh yeah, it also deposits
server.
1,600 Bethesda bucks into your account every month, offers increased rewards from the scoreboard, and sometimes offers discounts on items in the Atomic Shop. If you're deprived enough to commit to this game long term, I guess
deprived
you could
enough.
Just
deprived of what? Fallout 4, a game released in fucking 2012 or whatever? I'm deprived. 2014. I am not deprived. You're the one deprived. Still talking about Fallout 4 is all you can talk about. That game came out in 2014. Talk about deprived. You're the deprived. You're the one who can't move on to a new game. You're the one who's deprived. Like, you're still talking about Fallout fucking 4 in 2024. I love Fallout 4, but I mean as a revisit, not as like a daily bread thing.
Remember to cancel when you aren't playing. Please, the free atoms each month, they aren't worth it. What were we even talking about?
Yes, they are.
Charleston. Actually, not a whole lot happened our first night there. We mostly just explored the ruins for a
Lies.
while.
We all know what happened.
I ended up getting sucked into a side quest that
he ended up getting
me to
sucked.
a test to become an executive at a big pre-war mining corporation, and this was delivered with the subtlety I've come to expect from a Bethesda Fallout title. I bring up the stuff at Hornwright HQ because not only is it a great example of the limp observations 76 likes to ambush players with in its environmental storytelling, but also because it helps introduce a new storytelling method Bethesda cooked up for 76, multiple choice tests. I'm not even joking, 76 has many examples of multiple choice tests being used as diegetic storytelling methods.
Yep.
The one in Hornwright HQ was at least brief, and the correct answers could be intuited once you got on the writer's absurd juvenile wavelength, but the others I came across were not nearly as straightforward. After getting vaccinated against the plague, yes, it was that trivial that I can gloss over it in less than a sentence, Pat and I headed off to the last leg of the Responders questline at the nearby fire station to join the Fire Breathers. This was the more militant branch of the Responders, who went on high-risk operations against the Scorched. You get it? Fire Breathers? They're firefighters. They're fighting the scorched. Our first step for signing up with the fire breathers was a multiple choice test. There's environmental details scattered throughout the firehouse that will give you the answers, or you can just look them up online. It turned out my first test was just trying to get into the terminal the test was located on.
Oh my god, there's a quiz.
Why is it not letting me use the terminal? I like hit it, my UI flickers, and then it just... Wait, where did my UI go? Wait, what? My UI is gone now. Like, my entire HUD's just gone.
Are you able to move?
Yeah, I'm able to move. Just, my HUD is gone. I just want to use the f***ing terminal. God damn it, my UI's still broken.
Oh, you're sliding around the room in the animation.
Oh, okay, so I'm probably, like, desynced. Let me fast travel somewhere. Oh, can I not open my map? Oh, I can't do anything now. So I was
Yeah, it
able
might be
to...
a restart job.
So I'm able to open my Pip-Boy. I can't even open the menu to quit the game. I'm going to just, like, I cannot fast travel at this time. Oh. Oh. I am completely desynced.
Yeah, you're gonna have to restart, like, Control Alt Delete restart.
Yep,
That's
guess
impressive.
Alt F4. The test is mostly a bunch of real-life and in-universe trivia about first aid, survival techniques, and small unit tactics. The real test came afterwards when Pat and I had to go into a smoldering mine filled with scorched, hit a button, and survive the enemies lured over by the sounding alarm. It was so good I got to do it twice. Because I didn't listen to a
Standing.
training holotape
Oh, thank
before
God,
going into
standing.
the mine, my quest objective never updated to tell me to hit the alarm. So when Pat did it, it did not count my contribution. Then it was back to Charleston to finish the last Fire Breathers test. This one was an on-foot obstacle course. Yet another gameplay innovation that would see itself recycled a lot in 76. Fortunately, running obstacle courses is more engaging in 76 than multiple choice tests, so I didn't mind these as much. The Fire Breathers one was kinda busted though. You could follow all the arrows through the crumbling buildings down to the ground floor, or you could just jump down from the starting line's balcony and skip half the course. The second half of the Responders questline was definitely a noticeable step down from what they had going on for the first half. That's not to say the first half was particularly thrilling, but it at least had some moody atmosphere at times, and the quest structure did seem to welcome exploration. The second half started setting the pattern of busy work quests that, if the player woke up for a moment, might start to question why they were even doing these things. Well, let's just say the next chapter was going to have me asking that a lot more often. So after cheating on 2 of our tests and basically walking through the combat one,
Okay, guys, I am going to stop here. It has been, it has been 13 hours and 10 minutes, and I'm going to stop. I'm tired and brain dead and hungry. And, yeah, we're going to go dock up here and go to bed. I'm going to go get this in before I get ganked, you know, when I'm, like, too brain dead to, like, be monitoring, you know. Oh wait, no, there's more stuff here, is there? Oh, there is, yeah.
Drive active.
Okay, going to bed. Yeah, this was a good run on Mortal. I got ganked to the graveyard and lost some arrows and some bandages. Was the worst thing that happened to me today. 360 silver. I gotta get that put away. sweet. I need a broker. Or banker, I mean. Okay, now I'm up to 6 gold again, which is good. Now I have a set. And we will be bombing out of this now. Quick game. Yep, sounds good. And I told you to go home a long time ago. Do it. Like, actually do it. Are you stuck? I mean, what's your problem here? Fucking, what's your problem here? Get out of this, like, thing that you're doing here. Do this. Stop this now. And move. Yeah, move. Go. Get out of this weird, like, gravity well that you're in.
Warp drive active. Docking request accepted.
Okay, guys, just a reminder, you have been watching Skycat Live. Sorry, I'm just trying to get it all winded down here. You've been watching Skycat Live. I'm a full-time variety gamer all day, every day. Put me on in the background. It's really good to fucking see you guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Thank you for all the follows and the subs and the love that you've been giving me lately. And thank you so much for your time. Click on the cat space to donate. Come to skycat.live, which is my website, and click on the cat space to donate. If you're seeing me on YouTube or if you're on Twitch, you can sub and follow to me. Or if you don't want to pay Twitch 50% of your donation, you can come to the cat space and give me 100% of it. And thank you so much for your time. You have a wonderful day, and I will be on tomorrow for more Mortal, EvE, and FFXI. And yeah, and we're just gonna log right here, and I'm gonna stop right here and come back to this tomorrow. And I'm very excited to play some more games. And we're now in about a 10-day countdown from Dragon's Dogma 2, so we got a brand new game to look forward to coming up in a week and a half. And it's a really good time to be alive, guys. I love you so much. You have a wonderful day. Thank you. Okay, and then I'm gonna stop recording. Yes.